Dairylea, among others, has said recently it needs more milk to help meet the demands of the surging regional market, yogurt market. At the same time, Western co-ops are penalizing dairy producers for surpassing production quotas. With the regional dichotomy within the U.S. dairy industry, how can we implement a nationwide supply or growth management program as proposed in the Dairy Security Act, the dairy title of the proposed 2012 Farm Bill?
Yeah. Julie, that's an excellent question that clearly in the East, or most of the East, particularly Northeast, Mid-Atlantic, and Southeast, we hit more months that we don't have enough milk rather than many months that we have too much. However, when you're putting a national policy program together, you have to have components of that program that meet everybody's needs around the nation. And I think that's what's been carefully crafted into the Dairy Security Act program provisions. And it's very important to particularly those dairy farmers west of the Mississippi that there be a speed break of some sort that can help send a signal on supply side when the margins are going into a problem area as a result of supply-demand imbalance. Much like the CWT program, where we were wanting to participate, recognize the need for the program, but regionally you could have said, gee, does the Southeast and the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic want to participate at the same level as the other regions? Probably not, but as a practical perspective, you need to have a national program to make sure that you have the majority of the dairymen across the United States on the same page.
Recently, there have been opinions expressed among some dairy farmers that co-ops have been a valuable stabilizing force for U.S. dairy producers, but have been slower to embrace a more global future for the U.S. dairy. How would you respond to that criticism and why?
Julie, I think, as Chuck was saying earlier, the interest of agriculture in international activities, supply, demand, pricing, etc., is at an all-time high. I would tell you that from a dairy perspective, I think probably starting realistically about 10 years ago, the dairy industry took a keen interest in what was going on internationally and decided to do a number of things to help promote its industry within the international sector and became much more aware of it. So I'm talking processors, farmers, and cooperatives. United States Dairy Export Council is a great example where all three of those groups have come together, do research on what markets are we interested in, what markets are interested in us, what products do we need. And I would say if you go back 10 years or more, the U.S. was what I describe as an anyhow exporter. If we had a little extra and it happened to be what you wanted at our price and you showed up, we'd sell it to you. We really weren't focused on what did people want and what customers did we want. That whole thing is turned upside down. We're very focused. We had a long way to go from where we were to where we'd like to be, but I think we've made great progress the last 10 years. And the proof is in the pudding. The percentage of U.S. dairy production that's exported has risen from approximately 5%, give or take a little bit, 10 years ago to 13% this year, and looks like it's going to be relatively steady to increasing over the next few years. That wouldn't have happened without the focus.
And where is the biggest opportunity in that, do you think?
Well, clearly you've got a population base in the BRIC countries, and particularly China and India and over there in the Koreas, Japan area, that there's just a huge opportunity. And also in those areas, generally speaking, they've got many more people that are coming into an economic level with their wages that allow them to partake of better diets. And one of the first things people look for is more protein, and dairy is a great source of protein, excellent source of nutrition, and so we're trying to capitalize on that. So there's a lot of activity there.
It's an exciting time.
It is. It really
some
is.
of those developments. The lawsuit involving NNPF's cooperatives working together, herd retirement program, on the surface appears to be just another anti-livestock agriculture effort by an animal rights group. However, it has the potential to challenge the ability of cooperatives to work to help improve prices for their producer members. Should co-ops be concerned, and what are your concerns or fears related to this?
Well, clearly the antitrust lawsuits that are floating around the agricultural cooperative industry are of a great concern, not only to individual cooperatives that are involved in them, but also to folks representing the whole industry like National Council of Farmer Cooperatives. And quite simply, we believe that the way Capra-Volstead was structured and intended in the beginning was to allow farmers to act as a group, much like a single company or business entity could act. And so, simply put, I try to say to people, nobody tells General Motors how many Corvettes to make. They might make too many or they might make too few, but they get to decide. All we're asking, or think we have the right to do anyway, is to do sort of the same thing from the cooperative perspective, is act as one unit in concert to allow farmers to have the appropriate bargaining power in today's economy that's so important given the consolidation and integration that's taken place in retail processing and allow us to compete effectively. So we're concerned, and we're going to defend vigorously our rights to do what we think we are allowed to do and able to do. One of the issues that we're facing this spring in the dairy industry, which is a little bit contradictory and difficult to explain to people, is in the Northeast we think we're entering a very exciting era where the processors are making substantial investment in their infrastructure, existing infrastructure and greenfield new plants or additions to existing plants. Very exciting, because without that investment we could be the best producers in the United States or the world, and if you don't have any place to go with the product, that's a problem. So it's an exciting time looking ahead. And as we've looked ahead, we see a situation where maybe 3 to 5 years out, somewhere in there might not be as much milk supply from the farms as the plant system could utilize in the Northeast or the East Coast. That presents dairy farmers with a great opportunity, if they choose to partake of it, to expand. Well, one of the contradictory things we're experiencing is we're in a temporary period where, as normal in the spring, we've got a little too much milk, but this particular spring, because of the pressures of the world economy and what's going on, particularly in dairy producing regions west of the Mississippi, there is a huge amount of pressure as to what type of discounting is necessary to place that extra milk and the costs that are involved. The costs that are involved are literally double what is normal, even for us in the Northeast that don't normally have a huge problem. And so we're talking amongst ourselves and with our farmer members, explaining how other parts of the geography in the United States are handling these concerns and costs, and we're also trying to determine how we're going to handle them. And it's very contradictory to the long-term message of, hey, this is a great area to be in the dairy business because of the investment in the processing, and growth would be fine. We think we're going to have places to sell the milk, and yet this spring we're dealing with a little bit too much, which is a very temporary phenomenon, and it happens to be at an extraordinarily high cost, which leads farms to say, which is it, too much or too little?
It's a challenging year.